The moment he enters the galaxy's largest ship, a human mechanic freezes Jack's Callan, wiped the grease from his hands, and looked over the battered engine in front of him. The heat from the workshop lamps reflected off the scratched metal panels, and the faint hum of the old starship engine made the room feel alive. On Vexar 7, a dusty frontier planet at the edge of the Terran sector, life moved slowly, and Jax liked it that way. Most days he fixed engines, patched hulls, and dreamed quietly of a life beyond the small hangar he called home. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept him busy and out of trouble. That morning he had already replaced a fuel injector on an old freighter and adjusted the coolant matrix on a mining drone. Now he was trying to coax a stubborn fusion coil back to life. The engine had been abandoned for months, and every bolt felt like a challenge. Jax leaned closer, squinting at the readout. Sparks danced along the coil, and he muttered under his breath, "Come on! Come on!" A loud beep interrupted his focus, echoing across the workshop. It wasn't the engine. Jax froze and turned. Hovering above his workbench was a small hollow projector, its lights flickering like it had been waiting for him. He blinked. Hollow messages were rare, especially on Vexar 7. Most people got standard transmissions via comm beacons, but this was different. The message was personalized. A figure appeared in the projection. An alien, tall and slender, with luminescent markings running across its skin. Its voice was strange and melodic, and the words were subtitled in basic standard. "Jax Callan, you are required on the Leviathan. Arrival is immediate. This is not a request." Jax's stomach twisted. The Leviathan! He had heard stories. Every mechanic, pilot, and trader in the sector knew the rumors. The Leviathan was the largest ship in the known galaxy, a massive vessel of alien design that dwarfed entire cities. No human had ever entered it and returned unchanged. Its purpose, its technology, and even its size were beyond comprehension. Jack swallowed hard. What? He glanced around the dusty hangar as if the walls could give him advice. They didn't, his mind raced. Why him? He was just a mechanic. He had no special rank, no combat skills, no knowledge of alien engineering beyond what he'd read in old manuals. He was ordinary. And yet, the message was clear and urgent. He grabbed his tool belt and a small pack with essentials, his hands trembling slightly. He had no time to overthink it. A small shuttle waited at the edge of the landing bay, its hull gleaming under the twin suns of Vexar 7. The engines hummed, ready for departure. As he climbed in, he felt the old thrill of adventure he hadn't felt in years. His pulse raced with fear, curiosity, and something else, anticipation. The shuttle lifted off smoothly, leaving behind the dusty plains of Vexar 7. Jax pressed himself against the seat, eyes fixed on the stars, trying to imagine the scale of what awaited him. The Leviathan was enormous, a vessel the size of a small city, floating in orbit like a silent guardian, or perhaps a predator. The closer they got, the more imposing it became. Its hull was dark and metallic, but not cold. Subtle lines of energy ran across it like veins, glowing faintly in shifting colors. Its surface was so vast that even through the shuttle's viewport he couldn't see where it began or ended. "Okay, don't panic," he muttered to himself, though his voice sounded hollow in the cabin. "It's just a ship. Big, very big, but just a ship." As the shuttle approached one of the massive docking bays, a wave of unease hit him. The docking bay wasn't just large, it was enormous. Taller than a skyscraper and wide enough to swallow multiple shuttles at once. The walls pulsed faintly, almost as if the ship breathed. Jax's hands tightened on the seat. "Why do I feel like it's alive?" The shuttle docked smoothly, and the ramp extended. He hesitated at the threshold. The moment he stepped onto the Leviathan, he froze. The interior was beyond anything he had imagined. Corridors stretched endlessly, illuminated by soft, shifting lights. The walls were not plain metal. They seemed to shimmer with living patterns. faintly moving as if the ship itself were aware of his presence. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something else he couldn't identify, clean and sharp. He took a cautious step forward, then another. Every sound he made echoed slightly as though the ship was listening. His footsteps felt small, insignificant, swallowed by the scale of everything around him. As he walked deeper, hollow interfaces appeared along the walls, responding to his movements. Alien symbols rotated and shifted, but when he focused, subtle patterns seemed to recognize him. The Leviathan wasn't just a ship. It was a conscious, responsive entity. Jax felt his confidence waver. He had fixed engines on small freighters, ancient alien vessels, even battle drones, but nothing like this. The sheer scale and intelligence of the Leviathan was overwhelming. His heart raced, and for a moment, he doubted himself. Then, an alarm sounded. Not loud, not panicked, but deliberate. It was a sound that vibrated through the floor and walls, a warning that something was approaching. Jax instinctively ducked behind a massive support beam. The corridor ahead shimmered as shapes appeared. Alien guards, humanoid but taller, more rigid, and with sleek armor that glimmered with energy. They moved silently but deliberately, scanning the corridors. Jax's mind raced. He was a mechanic, not a soldier. What could he possibly do if they found him? Then he noticed something strange. Where the aliens moved, the ship itself seemed to react. Panels shifted, lights blinked in sequence, and hidden passages revealed themselves. The Leviathan was protecting him. He swallowed hard. He didn't understand why, but instinct told him that he had a purpose here. The ship had chosen him. Taking a deep breath, Jax moved forward, following the faint trail of energy that seemed to guide him deeper into the Leviathan. Every step was cautious, deliberate. He felt eyes everywhere, though no one seemed to be watching directly. The ship pulsed faintly beneath his feet, like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring. Finally, he reached a massive chamber. Its ceiling arched impossibly high, and platforms floated above, connected by glowing bridges of light. Strange machines hummed, wires and conduits snaking across the floor like vines. Hollow displays projected star maps, alien schematics, and incomprehensible symbols, all moving in perfect coordination. Jax's mouth went dry. He had never seen anything like this. The engine rooms he worked in on Vexar 7 seemed tiny and primitive compared to this. And yet, amid all this alien complexity, there was a purposeful simplicity. The Leviathan wasn't chaotic. It was organized, alive, and aware. And it seemed to trust him. He stepped closer to a console that hovered mid-air, faintly shimmering. As he touched it, the symbols shifted into a language he could read. Not perfectly, but enough to understand. Human, creator. Protector. Required. Jax swallowed. He had no idea what he was expected to do. But one thing was clear. He had been brought here for a reason. Something big, something important, something that only a human could accomplish. He looked around the chamber again, taking in the sheer scale and wonder of it. Fear still gripped him, but it was tempered by a growing sense of awe. He was standing on the deck of the largest ship in the galaxy, chosen by a living vessel that could change the fate of entire worlds. Jax Callan, a simple mechanic from a dusty frontier planet, had just realized that his life was about to change forever. And deep within the Leviathan, somewhere in the bowels of its immense corridors, a pulse of energy echoed, a heartbeat acknowledging him, a silent welcome to the adventure of a lifetime. He took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. Jax Callan stood in the heart of the Leviathan, trying to take in the enormity of the chamber around him. Every corner of the vast hall was alive with light and energy. Hollow displays floated mid-air, showing star systems he had only seen in maps and diagrams. Machines hummed in harmony, wires coiling and pulsing like veins of electricity. He had never felt so small, yet so important. For a moment he simply stood, unsure where to move. The corridors he had walked before were enormous, but this chamber seemed infinite. Platforms floated in the air, connected by glowing bridges that bent and curved impossibly. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. And it seemed alive. Then, without warning, a ripple of light passed through the floor. It wasn't just a visual effect. It was a pulse, rhythmic and deliberate. Jax froze. The air itself seemed to vibrate. He could feel it in his chest, in his stomach. The Leviathan was awake. At first he thought it was coincidence. Maybe it was part of the ship's energy systems. But then the holo displays shifted. Symbols reoriented themselves, forming patterns that seemed to respond to him. A soft hum grew louder, surrounding him, almost like a voice. Jax took a careful step forward, then another. The light pulses followed his movement, adjusting, guiding. He realized the Leviathan was aware of him, scanning him, testing him. Fear clutched at his chest, but he also felt something strange. Trust. He had never encountered a machine like this. Even the most advanced freighters and cruisers he had worked on were rigid, cold, predictable. The Leviathan was neither. It was a machine, yes, but one that thought, adapted, and sensed. And somehow, it had chosen him! As he moved deeper, a loud alarm rang out. Not a panic alarm, but a deliberate, steady tone. The pulse of the ship quickened. Jax's stomach dropped. Something was approaching. Shadows moved in the distance. Aliens! You could see their shapes before his eyes adjusted. Tall, armored figures, humanoid but sharper, more angular. Their armor glimmered with energy, reflecting the glowing corridors. They moved silently but with purpose, scanning the area. Jax ducked behind a massive support column, heart hammering. He had no weapons, no combat training. He was a mechanic. This was not part of his skill set. And yet, something strange happened. The Leviathan responded. Panels shifted along the walls, revealing hidden pathways and shortcuts. The floor beneath his feet hummed and vibrated, adjusting to guide him. The ship was protecting him. Jax swallowed hard and took a deep breath. Okay? Okay! I can do this!
I just have to follow it. He moved quickly, guided by the subtle pulses of the floor and the shifting lights along the walls.
The alien figures passed by, their senses seemingly unable to detect him. Every step he took felt synchronized with the Leviathan itself, as if he were part of the ship's living rhythm. Finally, he reached a junction where 3 corridors branched out. The lights pulsed more intensely down one path, almost like a heartbeat leading him. He followed it, his hands trembling, his mind racing. The corridor opened into a maintenance bay unlike anything he had ever seen. Giant machines, some taller than buildings he had worked on, stretched toward the ceiling. Energy conduits ran across the walls and floors, glowing with bright blue light. It was organized chaos, a labyrinth of advanced alien engineering. And in the center, a console hovered midair, glowing faintly. Symbols shifted as he approached, forming words he could read. Human. Required. Assist! Jax blinked. He had expected alien instructions, but this felt personal. He reached out tentatively, touching the console. The holographic interface rippled under his fingers, responding to his touch. He realized with a thrill that he could interact with it in ways the aliens couldn't. Before he could explore further, the floor vibrated again. A group of the alien intruders had entered the bay, their armor clinking softly as they advanced. They were armed with strange energy tools, but not weapons. They weren't here to kill. They were here to tame or control the Leviathan. Jax's mind raced. He had no experience fighting, no idea how to stop them, but instinct took over. He scanned the massive machines around him. He noticed a series of energy conduits that connected to the main reactor. If he could reroute power through them, maybe he could create a barrier or trap. His hands moved quickly, adjusting levers and switches he didn't fully understand. Sparks flew, but the system responded to him. The ship itself seemed to assist, directing energy flows according to his touch. Within moments, a shimmering energy field rose, blocking the aliens' advance. They froze, confused, unable to move forward. Jax stepped back, heart pounding. He was sweating, exhausted and terrified, but he had done it. His mechanical intuition, honed over years of working with stubborn engines and ancient systems, had allowed him to outsmart beings far more advanced than humans. The intruders retreated, but they didn't disappear. Jax knew they would return, and when they did, he would need a plan. He glanced at the console, and more symbols appeared. Adapt, learn, protect! He realized that the Leviathan wasn't just alive, it was teaching him. Every move he made, every adjustment, every calculation, the ship responded, guiding him to become more than just a mechanic. Hours passed. Though it felt like minutes, Jax moved through the Leviathan, learning its systems, repairing minor faults, and improvising solutions. Each success gave him confidence. The ship pulsed in rhythm with his heart, almost like it understood him, like it trusted him to take care of it.
And then he noticed something remarkable. The alien intruders were hesitant wherever he had already interacted with the ship.
His human touch, his improvisation, had created advantages no alien could counter. Where they were strongest, he was strongest too. Where they tried to predict his moves, the Leviathan adapted, giving him options they couldn't see. For the first time, Jax understood something profound. Humans were underestimated. Not because they were weak, but because no one realized what humans could do when they combined intuition, courage, and adaptability. He found himself in the engine core, a massive chamber that seemed to stretch infinitely upward. The energy here was intense, almost painful to be near. Sparks danced across conduits, and the hum of power was deafening. He touched the main control panel, feeling the energy flow under his fingers. "Okay, this is huge," he muttered. I can do this!" And then the Leviathan pulsed stronger than ever. Lights flashed along the walls, and a soft voice, alien, melodic, yet understandable in his mind, spoke. "Human protector!" "Capable!" Jax's heart raced. The ship had recognized him, not just as a visitor or a mechanic, but as someone essential to its survival. At that moment, alarms rang again. This time, the intruders were massing near the central nexus, the heart of the ship. They were organized, coordinated, clearly more dangerous than the previous groups. Jax's stomach tightened. He had never faced anything like this. Yet he knew, somehow, he had to stop them. He looked around the engine core, massive conduits stretched across the room, energy flows pulsing with the ship's heartbeat. He realized he could reroute power to create defensive systems, traps, and barriers. The Leviathan was teaching him, guiding him, and trusting him to act. For the first time, Jax felt something he hadn't in a long while: purpose. He wasn't just a small-town mechanic anymore. Here, inside the largest ship in the galaxy, he was vital. Every decision he made mattered. Every action could save the ship or doom it. He took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from his brow, and began adjusting the systems. Sparks flew, energy crackled, and the ship responded, bending its power to his will. Jax realized something incredible. He was not alone. The Leviathan was alive, aware, and allied with him. And for the first time, Jax understood the truth. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy. Not because they were weak, but because they could think, adapt, and fight in ways no one predicted. The intruders would come again. They would try to breach the heart of the Leviathan. But Jax Collin, the human mechanic who had frozen the moment he entered the galaxy's largest ship, was no longer frozen. He was ready. The pulse of the Leviathan matched his own heartbeat. Together, human and ship, they would face whatever came next. And somewhere deep within the endless corridors, a final realization took root in Jax's mind. The Leviathan had chosen him, not just as a mechanic, but as a guardian. For the first time, he felt truly alive. Jax Callan stood at the edge of the Leviathan's central engine chamber, panting, his hands streaked with grease and sweat. The hum of energy around him was deafening, yet beneath it all, a rhythm beat steadily, a heartbeat that seemed to match his own. The Leviathan had awakened, fully aware of his presence. It had guided him, trusted him, and now it depended on him. He glanced toward the distant corridors where the alien intruders had gathered. Their armor glimmered with an unnatural light, and their movements were precise, disciplined. They weren't like anything humans had fought before. They moved as one, coordinated, silent, and relentless. Jack swallowed hard. He was just a mechanic. That thought gnawed him, but he pushed it aside. Fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. The Leviathan had chosen him for a reason, and if it could guide him, perhaps he could outthink these attackers. He stepped carefully over a network of energy conduits, feeling the pulse of the ship beneath his feet. Every movement he made seemed to send ripples through the Leviathan, and he realized the ship itself was communicating with him, offering guidance without words. Panels shifted, pathways revealed themselves, and conduits hummed louder where he needed them most. Jax reached a junction and paused. The intruders had split into groups, advancing along multiple corridors. They were testing him, probing the ship for weaknesses. He realized then that this wasn't just a battle. It was a challenge of wit and adaptability. Humans were unpredictable. Aliens relied on rigid plans. They underestimated instinct and improvisation. He took a deep breath and began to act. The first group was approaching a vital reactor hub. Jack scanned the machinery around him. Conduits, panels, energy nodes, every element could be manipulated. Using tools he carried in his belt, he began rerouting power, diverting energy flows into the corridors to create barriers and traps. Sparks flew as circuits overloaded in a controlled burst. The aliens stopped, confused. Their instruments could not predict what was happening.
A barrier of raw energy surged between them and the reactor.
Jax's heart raced, but he smiled. It's working.
He moved quickly, ducking behind a support column as one of the aliens tried to bypass the energy barrier. A pulse from the Leviathan alerted him to a hidden side path. He took it, emerging behind another group of intruders who were advancing toward the control nexus. They had no idea he was there. Jax examined a complex console floating in midair. Its holographic interface shifted at his touch. He had learned enough of the Leviathan's systems to manipulate them in ways the aliens couldn't comprehend. Adjusting power levels, redirecting energy nodes, he created a series of traps along the corridors. Each one was clever, subtle, and effective. The intruders faltered at every turn. Where they expected resistance, they found confusion. Where they anticipated straightforward defenses, they encountered improvisation. Humans were clever in ways the aliens hadn't accounted for. Jax felt a surge of pride mixed with adrenaline-fueled fear. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost meaning in the vast humming corridors of the Leviathan. Jax moved with growing confidence, guided by the subtle pulses of the ship. Each decision, each adjustment, made him more capable. The Leviathan seemed to anticipate his thoughts, providing exactly the tools he needed. It was alive, aware, and adapting with him. At one point, Jax found himself in a chamber that overlooked the ship's core. The engine here was massive, a swirling storm of energy and light. Alien intruders were advancing from above, attempting to gain control of the core's systems. Jax knew that if they succeeded, the entire Leviathan could be compromised. He worked quickly, rerouting power through auxiliary nodes, creating a cascading effect of defensive energy. The aliens tried to counter, but every time they adapted, Jax improvised. He combined instinct, technical skill, and the guidance of the Leviathan itself. And then something extraordinary happened. The ship's energy flows began to respond directly to his thoughts. Not just movements or touch, but intention. It was as if the Leviathan recognized him as a partner, not just a visitor. He could anticipate attacks, preempt them, and manipulate the ship in ways no alien could. One by one, the intruders began to retreat, their formations breaking under the unexpected tactics. They had underestimated the combination of human intuition and the Leviathan's living technology. Jax felt a rush of exhilaration. This was the moment humans had been waiting for, proof that they were more than the galaxy expected. Even the alien crew members who had initially observed him with disdain began to watch in awe. A human, a simple mechanic from a dusty frontier planet, was reshaping the battle. His small hands and quick mind were turning the tide against beings who had centuries of technological advantage. He pressed deeper into the corridors, reaching areas of the Leviathan that seemed almost sacred. Energy conduits glowed brighter, responding to his presence.
Holo displays shifted, showing complex schematics that even he could begin to understand. The Leviathan was teaching him.
And then he realized something astonishing. The intruders weren't merely trying to capture the ship, they were trying to control it, to bend its will to their purposes. But humans were unpredictable. Aliens relied on rules, algorithms, and rigid logic. Jax relied on instinct, improvisation, and courage. He was chaos in their ordered world, and the Leviathan amplified that chaos into effective defense. He paused at the junction, breathing heavily. Ahead, a massive chamber glowed with energy. The control nexus. This was the heart of the Leviathan. The alien forces were gathering here, preparing for their final assault. Jax knew that the next move would decide everything. He looked around, assessing his options. Energy conduits ran across the floor and walls. Power nodes glimmered faintly, and the Leviathan pulsed beneath his feet, responding to his thoughts. Every system was available, every path open. He just had to trust himself. The first wave of intruders entered the Nexus. Jax activated a series of energy traps, forcing them into narrow corridors where their numbers worked against them. Sparks flew, shields flickered, and alarms rang out. The aliens were caught off guard, their rigid strategies collapsing under human unpredictability. He moved quickly, adjusting flows, rerouting energy, and improvising barriers. Every move was precise, every decision critical. The Leviathan hummed in approval, amplifying his actions. He could feel the ship responding, adapting, and learning with him. Hours, or perhaps minutes, passed in a blur of energy, light, and strategy. The intruders began to falter, retreating in confusion. Their formations broke apart, and the human ingenuity that Jax wielded became impossible to counter. Finally, the control nexus was secure. Jax stood amid the humming energy, exhausted but triumphant. He had done it. Not alone, the Leviathan had guided him, but he had acted, improvised, and led. His courage and intellect had proven that humans were capable of far more than anyone had imagined, and in that moment something incredible happened. The Leviathan pulsed, a soft glow spreading through the chamber. Symbols appeared in the air, readable to him now. Human, guardian-worthy. Jax exhaled, a mixture of relief, awe, and disbelief washing over him. He had faced beings far more advanced than himself, navigated the largest ship in the galaxy, and emerged victorious, not through brute force, but through ingenuity, instinct, and courage. He realized then the truth of the galaxy's perception of humans. We were underestimated, not because we were weak, but because we were unpredictable, adaptable, and resourceful. In a universe governed by logic and precision, human instinct was a weapon unlike any other. As he rested against a support beam, catching his breath, he noticed the Leviathan responding to him in subtle ways. Conduits glowing brighter where he placed his hands, panels shifting to offer guidance, energy flows adjusting to his movements. The ship had chosen him as a partner. Together, they were unstoppable. Jax allowed himself a small smile. He was no longer just a mechanic from Vexar. 7. He was a human guardian of the largest ship in the galaxy, a living testament to the ingenuity and courage of his species, but the battle was not over. Somewhere deep within the Leviathan, he sensed a presence, a force stronger, more deliberate than the intruders he had faced. A final challenge awaited, one that would test him and the Leviathan in ways he could not yet imagine. He squared his shoulders, wiped sweat from his brow, and stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. Humanity had proven its worth once, but now the ultimate test awaited. And for the first time in his life, Jax Callan understood the full measure of human potential. He was small, unarmed, and ordinary by many standards. But he was human, and that was enough to face the galaxy's greatest challenges. The pulse of the Leviathan echoed through the corridors, a steady, guiding heartbeat. Together, human and ship, they moved forward toward the final confrontation. Jax smiled, feeling a surge of determination. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long. It was time to show them what they were truly capable of. Jax Callan moved through the endless corridors of the Leviathan, his heart pounding with anticipation. Every pulse of the ship beneath his feet resonated with him, steady, alive, guiding him toward the central nexus, the heart of the vessel.
He had faced the alien intruders, outwitted them, and proven that human ingenuity was unmatched.
But now something stronger awaited him. Something deliberate, intelligent, and far more dangerous. He reached a massive chamber, its scale unlike anything he had encountered before. The ceiling arched impossibly high, vanishing into darkness, and floating platforms hovered above, connected by glowing bridges of light. At the center, the energy of the Leviathan swirled violently, a storm of raw power. And there, emerging from the shadows, stood the alien commander. Tall, imposing, with armor that shimmered like liquid metal, it radiated authority and menace. Its eyes glowed faintly, scanning Jax with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. This was no ordinary intruder. It was the one orchestrating the attacks, the one seeking to control the Leviathan. Jax's stomach tightened. He was a mechanic, not a soldier. He had no weapons, no combat training, nothing but his instincts, intelligence, and courage. Yet he felt no fear, only determination. The Leviathan's pulse beneath him reminded him that he was not alone. Together, they could face anything. The alien commander spoke, its voice resonating through the chamber like a low thunderclap. "Human! Your presence is an anomaly! You should not exist here. Leave, and your species will remain insignificant." Jax swallowed hard. He had no reply. "Words would not win this fight. Actions would." The commander raised its hand, and energy surged toward him. Jax dodged instinctively, feeling the pulse of the Leviathan guiding him. Sparks flew as raw energy collided with the ship's defenses. He realized then that the Leviathan could amplify his actions, respond to his intentions, and even anticipate threats before they struck. He darted toward a series of energy conduits running along the chamber walls. With quick thinking, he rerouted power from the main reactor into the conduits, creating barriers that forced the commander to move along paths he had chosen. Each step he took was precise, strategic, guided by the Leviathan's living awareness. The alien commander adapted, but Jax was faster. Humans were unpredictable, improvisational, and capable of seeing solutions where rigid minds could not. He used every trick, every tool, every instinct to outmaneuver the alien, creating traps, energy fields, and diversions that no algorithm could anticipate. At one point, the commander struck with raw force, sending a wave of energy that threw Jax across the chamber. Pain shot through his body, but he rolled, keeping his focus. He reached a control node hovering in midair and activated it, redirecting the ship's core energy to reinforce barriers. The commander's attacks weakened, slowed by the unpredictable defense. Hours, or perhaps minutes, passed in a blur of energy, movement, and tension. Jax realized that brute strength would not win this fight. He had to think, adapt, and innovate. Every human quality, the ability to improvise, to see connections, to act instinctively, became his greatest weapon. The Leviathan pulsed in response to his actions. Panels shifted, energy flows adjusted, and conduits illuminated paths that no alien could anticipate. Jax felt a strange synergy with the ship, as though they were one entity, combining human instinct with alien engineering on an unprecedented scale. Finally, he saw an opening. A series of conduits converged in a pattern that could trap the commander, channeling the energy into a controlled field. He ran toward it, dodging blasts of energy, and activated the sequence. The conduits glowed intensely, and a shimmering energy net expanded surrounding the alien commander. The commander struggled, trying to break free, but the pattern was flawless. The Leviathan had responded to Jax's commands perfectly, amplifying his ingenuity into decisive action. The alien's eyes widened, a mixture of disbelief and fury. Humans were not supposed to do this, to adapt, to control. Yet here Jax was, a single human shaping the outcome of a battle no alien had expected to lose. He stepped closer, keeping his focus, and rerouted additional energy to stabilize the field. The commander's attempts to escape became weaker, its movements slower. Jax's mind raced, improvising one final adjustment. With the decisive pulse, he channeled the ship's core energy through the field, forcing the alien into submission. Silence followed. The storm of energy in the chamber subsided and the Leviathan's pulse returned to a steady, calm rhythm. The alien commander, defeated but alive, bowed its head in acknowledgement. It was not just Jax's skill, but the combination of human intuition and the Leviathan's living systems that had triumphed. Jax collapsed onto one of the platforms, exhausted but exhilarated. His hands were scorched, his clothes singed, his body trembling from adrenaline. But he had done it. Against beings far more advanced, he had prevailed. Not through brute force, but through ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. The Leviathan pulsed gently beneath him, and symbols appeared in the air. Readable to Jax now. Human chosen were they, guardian of the Leviathan. A wave of realization washed over him. He had started as a simple mechanic, a human overlooked by the galaxy, underestimated at every turn. But here, in the heart of the largest ship in existence, he had proven that humans were capable of greatness. Jax looked around the chamber, seeing the Leviathan in a new light. The energy flows, the floating platforms, the adaptive systems. They were not just tools. They were alive, intelligent, and capable of partnership. And they had chosen him as their human guide, their guardian. For the first time, he understood something profound. Humans had always been underestimated not because they were weak, but because they were unpredictable, resourceful, and courageous. In a galaxy ruled by logic, precision, and rigid planning, human instinct was a force that no algorithm could control. He rose to his feet, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. There were still mysteries to uncover, systems to explore, and the galaxy itself to navigate. But he was ready. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a human who had earned the respect of the most powerful living ship in existence. The alien commander, now subdued, watched silently. It no longer seemed threatening, only aware. Jax realized that the galaxy's perception of humans would begin to change after this. One small, seemingly ordinary human had reshaped the outcome of events on a scale no one had anticipated. Jax allowed himself a smile. He had faced fear, exhaustion, and overwhelming odds, and emerged victorious. His heart still pounded, but he felt stronger, more capable, alive in a way he had never been before. The Leviathan pulsed around him, a living partner and guide, acknowledging his courage, his skill, and his humanity. Together, they had faced the impossible and won. He turned toward the central console, placing his hands on the glowing interface. The ship responded instantly, light shifting, energy flow stabilizing. Symbols formed words he could understand clearly now. Human protector, ally. The galaxy awaits. Jax Callan, a mechanic from a dusty frontier planet, now stood as a guardian of the largest ship in the galaxy. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long, but he had proven that with courage, ingenuity, and determination, a single human could make a difference on a scale no one imagined. The adventure was far from over. Beyond the Leviathan, beyond the stars, new challenges awaited. But Jax no longer feared them. He had faced the unimaginable, adapted, and triumphed. Humanity had shown its worth. He took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the Leviathan beneath him, steady and guiding. Together they would explore, protect, and perhaps even change the fate of the galaxy itself. And for the first time, Jax realized that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had never seen a human like him before.